Welcome to Scrappy ABM. This is your podcast with practical playbooks that don't break the bank. This is your host, Mason Cosby, and today I'm joined by one of my top 17 favorite team members, Jim Gilkey. Jim, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Maybe we'll go with top salesman since I'm the only one here.
There it is, top seller. Well, Jim, I'm excited. One, we're going to actually bring quite a few folks from the Scrappy ABM team on over the next few weeks because we've been learning a lot of really cool stuff on our clients. We'll share some of that with you. But I'm excited to dig into this because we, over the past 3-ish years of existing, have done quite a few events. And those events have been largely, like, if I'm being really honest, somebody paid for my ticket and were like, hey, do you want to come? I was like, sure. Or it was like, I went and spoke. And I think the most events I ever went to in a single year was 4. And I got to speak, or somebody paid for my ticket for all 4 of them. And they were fairly largely spread out. It was great. But we made a decision, I think it was December, when we had like a revenue team on site. We're like, we're gonna go for events and we're just gonna see how it goes. And we signed up we're doing 12 events this year as a team of like me and you. So I mean, we've invested, I think, between flights and hotels and tickets, like it's about a $30,000 to $40,000 all-in investment that we made to go to events. And we've learned some stuff. So we're excited to share some of those things with everybody. And before I dig in, like, I just want to go ahead and throw out, we had a premise, we had a plan, and we got punched in the mouth. And we had to totally change the plan because I had not been to an event in a while where I wasn't a speaker. And I'm just gonna be really honest, being a speaker at an event is like easy mode because you just like introduce yourself and like people see the speaker on your name tag and they think you're important. And then you just like point them to your session and you we've consistently booked out of a session between 10 to 15% of the audience. So like, it's not crazy hard to make events work well when you speak. We didn't speak at most of the events that we've gone to this year, I did speak at BWMX. We also went to SaaStr. We went to Demand and Expand. We went to ANA. We went to Gartner. I did get the opportunity to speak at Gartner, which was so fun. And then we also went to Salesforce Connection. So we've already done in the front half of the year 6. I think there was a 7th event that I'm not forgetting. But regardless, we've done a lot. It's been a lot of events. And Jim, love to just dig into first as we think back on all the events that we've done. What was the upfront game plan and strategy that we were planning to run with for this year?
Yeah. So the original premise of this, and following kind of our framework, we look at the list of accounts that's on our target list for ABM. We find where those people are hanging out and we try to get the right message in front of them, which anyone who follows this podcast knows we try to lead as much as we can with the thought leadership and being helpful and knowing that if there's a need, people know how to book a meeting with me and jump into an evaluation. And so we went into the year asking some friends that are in the space and doing some research on our own to find out where marketers are hanging out, where do they learn, and which events would have forward thinking and innovative kind of conversations naturally as a part of them. And so we started to go to these events. Now, there are a lot of things that we learned that we'll dive through here in a second, but the long and short of it is this did not turn out how we thought. There's some major limitations, like when you're not a sponsor, you don't get the registration list. And so, yes, you can look up some people on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but if you don't have the full registration list, especially ahead of time, it becomes much more difficult to reach out to folks ahead of time and book meetings. And so the original idea of getting a list, reaching out to those individuals, pre-booking meetings, and then showing up to these events with a full schedule of meetings just didn't happen.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that a lot of these events, so it's not just the sponsor side, but I, as a speaker, when I would go, I would have full app access. So we would scan through the app and see who all was there. Because we're a vendor in an agency, we actually had a different classification of ticket just to attend. And there were multiple events where like you couldn't see the attendees to even network. Like it was just, you had to like stumble upon people. And again, huge challenge. So for some of them, we did what we could. I actually had my lovely EA pop into the app and like take screenshots and run all that through ChatGPT or Claude to like figure out who was there and build a target account list. But even at that point, we were still then doing like LinkedIn outreach while at the event because the event app didn't open up until a day before. and then trying to book meetings while we were there, and very rarely actually got a booked meeting in person when you start messaging them on day 2 of a 3-day event. So yeah, that was the basic premise that we typically ran with, is like pre-book meetings or like book out of the session. Or the other one was that we've run with a lot is go to sessions where they talk about things that you can solve. Well, as conferences didn't have topics that were account-based marketing focused. They were like really AI focused. So honestly, the rooms didn't naturally give themselves away of like where our target accounts would be. So yeah, it was again, invested at this point $30,000 to have all of our plans not work. So Jim, as we look at what failed, I'll go ahead and tease this out. Jim, what were some of the results from this year still?
Yeah. Given all of that, the lack of insight into who's going to be there, the lack of responsiveness. Here's a spoiler alert. People don't use the event app for messaging. And that includes us who are actively in the event apps trying to message people, realizing on day 3 that we had messages from other people that wanted to book meetings with us to sell to us that we didn't even see the whole time. And so regardless of how we were set up for failure, we were still able to walk out of this year with over 40 opportunities. We were averaging about 8 opportunities per event. Now, there are obvious swings in that. Some of the events that we went to realized probably not a great fit for us. And others we realized amazing fit for networking and not for selling. And so there are still events that we will go back to next year, but the game plan will be completely different. Who can we collaborate with? Who can we partner with? Who do we keep the relationship up with? And then there are completely new events that we will plan on going to. As we get further into this episode, I'll explain a little bit of why and how we have shifted our thinking around which events we'll go to in 2027.
So again, I love this because we got punched in the mouth and I'll actually go ahead and share during our first event where we just like totally, the plan was not working. We did actually have a conversation and it was just like, do we just go ahead and go home? It's like, maybe let's just screw this and like change our flights and cancel a bunch of other events. And then I don't remember if it was me or if it was you, but one of us threw out, let's just go talk and see what happens. So Jim, who do we end up starting to talk to as kind of the new core audience for our event plays?
Yeah, this is reinforcing the behavior of continuing to look at the data and look at the numbers and where people are spending their time. So we looked at, for one of these conferences, a target account list of 350 folks. And these individuals, as we started to look at what sessions they might be at or where they might be spending their time at the conference, we realized about 10% of those were sponsoring the event. And so when we made this shift to not go into sessions and try to ask insightful questions and generate conversations coming out of a session, and really just spend our time walking around the show floor and talking to the different sponsors, it is incredible how that shifted our strategy for these events. And so we think about the data of who are we trying to reach and where are they at in their level of engagement with our brand? And then how does that create our personalized messaging? Well, we have a captive audience because there's nobody walking the show floor while there are sessions going. And we have our target account list matched up against these sponsors, knowing they are the right size, they are the right industry. And the best thing for us as agency that sells to marketers is that the marketers are the ones typically setting up the booth. And so when we go over to a booth, we can just literally open up the conversation with, hey, do you have a marketer here that is helping run the show? And that is usually the immediate reaction from their end of, oh, sure, Sally or Susan or whoever it might be is right over here. And they walk us right to that marketer, instantly to the decision maker, in our case, of who we want to be speaking with. And then the conversation becomes really natural for us because we lead a lot with the thought leadership side and wanting to genuinely help people first and not assuming that anybody's ready to buy from us. We just start with asking questions of, hey, why'd you pick this event to sponsor to? Candidly, we want to figure out, is this worth it for us to come back next year? And realizing why all of our target market is choosing to be associated with a conference or not was really important for us to find out. But then the natural, how is this working? What else are you doing? How does this compare with the other things that you're doing? You can quickly uncover, hey, we're at this event, for instance, SaaStr, because we have a new AI product and our executive suite wants us to promote that. And we are here to get the association with a forward-thinking AI-driven group and conference. And it is working well or it is not working well, depending on who you're talking to. But it's great feedback and a great introduction into a conversation.
And I love the basic premise of we just walked up and asked people, do you have a marketer? That sounds simple, but for the first like quite a few, we would just go up and like, strike up a conversation, and then they ended up selling us. And it was like, we're not actually a buyer. And it was a waste of their time. And it was a waste of our time. So we just got the advice. Shout out to the team over at Sequel that is also running this play, because I would see them in their green jackets walking around the showroom floor, and then they'd only be there for a day. Super smart. But we like asked them, or like, how are you killing it? And they're like, we just literally go up and say, where's your marketer? And it was just such a simple thing to, for like lead with some candor of, hey, I'm not really a buyer. Like, I'm just looking for another marketer, like nerd out with and like hang out.
Right.
Worked really well. So the other thing that we did is, again, we actually just would look at the sponsors in advance of the event, as we recognize this is the go forward strategy, and would go ahead with a list of sponsors we wanted to speak with. So we knew day one who we're going to target. And actually later in our event season, we're typically able to get to conversations with every sponsor that we had as a core sponsor to speak with by the end of day one. So then day two and day three were all around like serendipity and advancing that relationship further.
Yeah, there's two other pieces that I think are relevant. One, when you think about the serendipity and those moments that you could potentially engineer if you have friends at these events, we look at just being friendly, being fun, trying to be on brand for Scrappy ABM, where we run every meeting with dad jokes all throughout, and we just like to do things that are spontaneous but also scrappy. And so when we meet a person at a booth and we're having fun with them, we can go back and check in a couple of days later. Maybe they've had a conversation with somebody that actually fits right within who we like to work with, because we want to be really clear with everyone if it's going to be a fit or not, by sharing who we work with and who we do the best work with, so they can say, hey, that's me or that's not me. But many times what happens is they say, it's actually him or it's actually her. And they can introduce us to somebody else later on at the conference because they know who we work with, because we are able to speak so specifically to what our best customer profile looks like. And the other piece too is, as you can extrapolate this to think about 2027 and the events we might go to, shifting from who attends a conference to learn things to who sponsors a conference. Now, I understand if you're not targeting marketers, this might not work as well, but typically every booth at every event will have some sort of marketing presence having set the booth up. And so if we start to look at our clients and see a pattern, if we do really well with ed tech, then we can start to look at, okay, what are the ed tech conferences? Because all of those sponsors are a great fit for that ICP. And you look at HR tech, and what are those HR conferences that the HR tech vendors will be at sponsoring? And that completely shifts from we need to be a speaker and we need to be at a marketing conference to we just need our market to be at that event and sponsoring. And so that opens up so much more for us to be really specific with our messaging. Because if you're at an HR conference talking to HR tech vendors only, you can be real specific about the examples that you use, the questions that you ask, and it feels more personalized to them. And isn't that the point of ABM in the first place?
Yeah. I think the other thing is, and this is slightly personal, but we had this thought that events would go better if I went, because people quote unquote knew me in the marketing space. But like, candidly, if we go to an HR tech conference or a manufacturing, no one knows me in that space. So it actually creates this environment where we can actually scale events, because we're not bound by one person's face. We're bound by the number of people that we can employ that can go to conferences and can speak well to what we do and how we do it and engage well in live conversations. So again, as you think about the ability to then scale something like this, you no longer really have a single person as a bottleneck for continued growth through this event play, which is one of the things that I loved a lot. And so did my wife.
Right. And to the point of, we both have families, Mason. So we don't want one person spending 26 out of the 52 weeks of the year
Yeah.
on the road at events. And so if we get such a lift from the conferences where people recognize you wearing your orange sneakers on day one in your bright orange polo, and they see you on stage, then let's have you go to those and not also have to double up on all these other conferences where they might not recognize you, and that effort wouldn't make a significant difference. And so being able to spread out the work helps save the bandwidth of different individuals. And then you're more on fire, more excited for those events where you are getting in front of large crowds and where people recognize you, because we did have that happen quite a few times as well, where somebody has listened to the podcast. Thank you, by the way, for listening to the podcast. And they wanted to come up and let us know what they've learned and how it's working, what they're implementing. Those are exciting conversations as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked a lot on the data component. So again, if you're listening to this and you listen to our past episodes, I'm going to be very clear. The event plays still do work from past episodes. This was just a new one where we were like, okay, this works for literally anyone, because the other benefit is it's not going to be event specific. So like, again, attendees lists are based on like how the event itself wants to release those lists. Whereas as part of sponsoring is that you actually get promotion. So like, who the sponsors are in advance, which is why this works for any event at any time. So we talked a lot on the data component. Now I want to dig into what are some of the things we actually did, because some of these were really fun. So how do we actually break open some of these conversations with folks?
Yeah. So this all started to snowball when we were at the Forrester B2B conference. There are the obvious paths, but I'll still say them because they're not obvious to everybody. The distribution of walking up to somebody at a booth and striking up the conversation that I mentioned. There's also the partner or customer play of if we have a customer that's at one of these events. Shout out to Natalie at Data Axel. She took us all around and introduced us to all of her friends and said, hey, this is the agency I'm working with. And that is something that we were able to grow through a motion which we would not have been able to accomplish ourselves. And then there is the option, obviously, of going into a session that is right on, the topic of what you do as a business, asking some insightful questions so people know what you're talking about, and then naturally striking up conversations with other people at the tables or in the seats afterwards. What really struck us as we were walking around and talking to some of the booths at Forrester B2B, they had one company sponsoring a Latte station where you could screen print whatever you wanted. And their people would upload a picture of their family and then screen print that on top of the latte. And then every person was doing the same thing. They take a photo and they share it with those that they were in the picture with, and then they would drink it. And so we decided, if we can upload any image, why not get on Canva real quick, take our logo and the company's logo who we're getting ready to talk to, screen print that on the top of the latte and use that as our icebreaker. And so you imagine yourself working at a booth, you're tired because it's the middle of the afternoon, your legs hurt because you've been standing all day, you've constantly been trying to pitch people, and maybe it's working, maybe it's not. And then someone comes up to you with a latte, which is caffeine, it's going to keep you going, which is exciting for you. And then you see your logo and theirs on the top. What an icebreaker for us. Some of those conversations and some of those reactions I wish we caught on video, because they were just really incredible, seeing our logo and theirs, and the lighting up of people's faces when they were receiving that as a gift. And then obviously the conversation that kind of followed that.
The other thing that was super fun about that is people would actually take photos and then post it on their company socials. So it actually, even to people that weren't at the conference, got a brand association of Scrappy ABM plus their company at scale, which is kind of crazy. So this was easily one of the most favorite plays. And Jen, I think the lesson I want people to hear is looking around your environment and actually having a little bit of creativity, because we didn't have that as a game plan. Like, we didn't know there was going to be a screen printing logo latte station. And people, what was fun was people were even impressed by that, because they're like, wait, you just made this up on the spot? And I was like, yeah, like, this is just, and we made jokes, but I was like, it's Scrappy ABM at its finest. Like, but there's always something like that. Like, there's always a logos, or there's always a latte station. There's always lunch. And then Jim at Gartner, I got to go to Gartner by myself. At Gartner, the sponsors weren't allowed to go through like the buffet lunch. So one of the things that I actually did is I just like got a couple of plates and like loaded up with food for one of the sponsors and just brought them lunch. And the CMO is there and is like, you fed my people, I'll take the meeting. And it was like, okay, this is cool. So like, it doesn't have to be the latte. It can just be like, I brought you a plate of food out of the kindness of my heart. And like, I didn't expect the CMO to see it. I didn't expect to get a meeting, but like, that's the kind of stuff that's not crazy difficult, but like being kind as a way of getting in front of someone always works. So
Right.
anyway,
And I think the other side of this kind of related to food is there are many times you sponsor an event and you can have an official after hours happy hour or dinner or something that is associated with the event. All of these events are in cities that will also have restaurants that are not being used, they're not rented out. And so one of the other plays that we did that I thought was a lot of fun as we think of like destinations of where people could land when we get them engaged is this idea of doing taco night. And so we wanted to find an event, and this started at Forrester B2B, where we could meet up and spend time with those that we could potentially, start relationships with, whether it's for partnerships, whether it's for sales and just friendships. But we weren't able to find anything. There wasn't a whole lot going on. And so we decided, well, we're going to create something. And you know what is really scalable, especially from a price point? Tacos. So we found a taco place that was within walking distance of the conference center. We walked around to all of the booths, everyone that was a fit for working with us, and we just invited them to a taco night. And we had a little registration form, which shout out to Evan, our marketing lead, for putting that together, because that was just insanely fast and probably the most impressive part all on this whole campaign for the individuals. But then after hours, we just met people at tacos and we hung out and we had a good time. And so that is a great way to be creative, to find something that is in town, to get the face time with individuals that is still as meaningful, and to not have to break the bank with tens of thousands of dollars with an official event and maybe not even full control over, who shows up and who doesn't.
$250 including tip, by the way, or what's like 10 target accounts. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
The other thing that was the unintended benefit is because we went to so many events that were typically in the same niche. We saw similar folks, or actually the exact same folks, at some conferences later. So we made a relationship with Forrester, but I saw them at Demand and Expand, and I saw them at Gartner, and I was able to continue those conversations because they just kept seeing me. And a couple of them were like, "Oh, you're taco night guy," and I was like, "Didn't know that's what I was going to become," but like, it was memorable. And I think in a world of events where everybody's trying to stand out, again, we threw together a taco night. We went to Scrappy, like, you go to scrappyabm.com/taco. I think the landing page is still up. Jim and I walked over to the taco place, took a selfie in front of it, sent it to our marketer. I wrote up the copy in like 5 minutes. He threw together a landing page, and like, we just told people to go to scrappyabm.com/taco. That in and of itself is memorable. And again, we have website de-anonymization. We actually like got quite a few people to go to the website and like flagged them and could follow up that way too. But I mean, is again, $250 for tacos for 10 target accounts. And we booked 4 meetings out of that dinner. I mean, it's crazy how simple it was, but just easy to execute.
Yeah, I would agree that the being memorable does not have to be associated with being expensive.
Yep.
And I would say, would have booked more meetings from that, except we had a customer or two at that. And so out of the target accounts that were there, I mean, it was all except for maybe a couple that we walked out with opportunities. And so, it's a great thing to think about what are the ways that you could essentially break the mold. And I think a lot of times when you go into one of these really scrappy kind of plays, that tends to stand out in people's minds because everybody is doing the same thing. They're buying the same technology. They're running the same kind of sequences to the same kind of lists. They're doing the same kind of sponsorships, and doing something different sometimes is just a breath of fresh air. And so I'm not saying that this needs to be your go-to, but obviously a big piece of it. And the last piece kind of on this from a destination perspective. Now this worked in our scenario because Mason is the CEO, the thought leader, and the one that teaches from Scrappy ABM. I'm the sales lead, and I am the one that you talk to when you want to have a conversation about whether or not it's worth it for an evaluation to see if we could build a program for you. And so when we talk about what destination we're sending people to, what the call to action is. It makes it very easy when we go to events together, because if you want to learn, if you want advice, go to Mason. If you want to book a meeting and see if you could work with us, come to me. And so that makes a really clear and easy delineation for people, knowing what they're going to get before they even go and have a conversation with one of the two of us.
Yeah. And whenever I do get the opportunity to speak, I actually literally say that from the stage, where it's, hey, we're hanging out, like, stand up, Jim. So if you want to like talk with us about working with us, go talk to Jim. If you're just going to learn and like get some advice for free, I'm here to do whatever for the next 2 days. And we found that that works really well. The other thing that I use this framing as for events is when you have people that are on staff that are at the event, you've got 3 roles. You've got networkers, offers, and setters. So networkers are people that like find the target accounts and actually identify who you actually want to even speak with. Offers are typically people, it's going to sound odd, but like people like me that are executives that can end up having great conversations and go in the weeds and like are going to talk through like market direction and where things are headed. So these are typically subject matter experts that are at the event. And then you train your subject matter experts or your executives that based on specific triggers that you hear in conversation, you want to then connect them with a setter who puts a meeting on the calendar after the event. And the ideal stage is that you have continuity. So whoever sets the meeting holds the first meeting and is on the first meeting. So you've got continuity from event to then post event for actually closing the deal. So again, that's why it works for Jim and myself. Jim is our setter and our closer. I am pretty much always the content offer. So even if they're not ready, we have our ABM in a day workshop where we send folks to, and we even do pretty significant discount codes by event so that people can just come that way and we can get some kind of attribution. I know that's a cuss word for some people, but again, we want to make sure that we actually know where are we not just getting the highest ROI today, but where are we actually developing a relationship with the right fit companies today that may pay off 2-3 years from now. And that's fine. So in short, that was a big shift for us. We stopped focusing on attendees and started focusing on sponsors because sponsors are at the event. They are spending money to acquire their audience and they need to generate a return. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't, at which point we might be a good help for them. So Jim, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close out this episode?
The last piece, with the A word attribution that you mentioned, I think when you think about direction, how to measure these things, it's always important to build in layers that are not going to be the layers that you immediately send up to your C-suite. There needs to be ways that you measure all of your plays that will help you understand where you need to focus when trying to optimize. And so for us, there are multiple layers of what we would try. One is obviously, is this the right market that is there? And some sort of measurement of that. And then there's also the number of relationships that you start. There's a lot of good conversations you have when you meet with people at an event. Some of them are, I'm really happy to see you. I'm really nice because we're face to face, but I'm never going to respond to an email. And some of them are, I'm dead serious. I want to work with you right now. And we've heard both sides. But outside of, did I get meetings booked from this? There are other ways of measuring from us. It could be going to the taco landing page. It could be signing up for a newsletter or our podcast or coming to the ABM in a day workshop. Many ways that we could help people that weren't necessarily, hey, work with us right now. And a lot of times, if you build those layers in, if the play itself is not running, that helps you understand, hey, is this an event that's just not for us? Or is this something that we need to change with what our offer is to get more people to convert? Because you don't want to throw away events as a strategy if your offer is just needing to be reworked. And so having the right direction in place, measuring the right things helps you know where you need to tweak this to make sure that your events work for you.
Love it. Jim, thanks so much for joining me today. If people want to find out more about you, where would you point them?
Check me out on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/J Gilkey, Gilkey.
Love it. Well, again, Jim, thanks for joining me. This has been Scrappy ABM. We'll see you guys in the next one.